This video shows 7 secrets that you never knew about pivot tables. Well, you never knew about 6 of them. In a pivot table, can we get the average of the non-zero rows as part of the pivot table? Hey, welcome back to the Mr. Excel Netcast. I'm Bill Jelen. Up here we have just a simple basic pivot table from this data here. So we have several different launches, different services that are offered, and amounts for those, right? And here we have the total of the amount for each service for each launch. But at the bottom, we want to know the average that was billed for each service. See, but there's some launches that don't use a particular service, right? So here, it's not just a matter of adding it up and dividing by 9. Only 8 of the launches use the service. So we want to get rid of that one. And right now, the person is doing this with an AverageIF function that is not part of the pivot table. The question is, why can't I have a pivot table that will give me the sum of amounts and the average of non-zeros? What a tricky question that is. In fact, when I start every live seminar, I always encourage questions and I say, at some point today, you might hear me say, let's talk about that after the break, which is a code word for, I can't solve this right now, but given a break, I'll figure it out. I knew that this was going to involve writing a DAX measure. DAX is a formula language that's available in certain pivot tables, but not regular pivot tables. It's an amazing feature. But I'm rusty on DAX. But for people who have just built regular pivot tables and you've never seen a data model pivot table, we have to do some pre-work here to make all of this work. And the first thing we have to do is format as table. So home, format as table, or Control T. You would think it would be possible to do this without the format as table, but then when we add new records later, it really blows up, right? So in this case, definitely Control T. They call it Table 1. Which isn't a great name, and I'm going to rename this to be L costs for launch costs. All right, so now that table has a name. Starting from the table, I go to Insert, Pivot Table, from Table or Range, and right here, this is the difference. I'm going to say add this data to the data model. This sentence really should say, allow me to use DAX formulas in this pivot table, and we will build our pivot table right here where we can see it, like that. Okay, now I'm going to start out building the exact same pivot table. So launches down the left-hand side, services across the top, and sum of amount. That's actually creating an implicit measure, and so many of my friends will tell me that you should never do that, and I keep doing it nonetheless. All right, so we now have the exact same numbers we had before with how much we spent on each launch for these various services. The asterisk there, that's because my pivot table defaults. I'm going to turn that off. All right, so we go back to no asterisks because everyone's going to say, what's the deal with the asterisks? Okay, so if you have the Power Pivot tab available, we're going to say measure, new measure. But a lot of people don't, right? So what we do is come over here to the pivot table fields list, and you see that the name of the table is above the fields in that table. It's possible to have multiple tables in the pivot table when you check that box for add this data to the data model. So I'm going to click on the table name and do add measure. All right. The measure name is going to be called AverageNonZero. AverageNonZero. You can call it whatever you want. And we're going to build this formula. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to build the formula. It was Mark Proctor from Excel Off the Grid that built the formula. I'll tell you more about Mark in a minute after we get this working. Okay, here we go. This is our DAX formula. It's going to use a function that we don't have in Excel called the divide function. In the divide function, we give it a numerator and a denominator. The numerator, sum of amount, that's awesome, right? That's actually not going into the original detail data, but going into the resulting pivot table and grabbing these amounts that are visible here, right? And then for the denominator, we're going to use another function that's unique to DAX called calculate. It's a lot like sum ifs, where we say, what we want to calculate and what the filter is, right? And this is beautiful. So a function called DISTINCTCOUNT of the project, the launch name, where the L costs amount are not equal to 0. This is a great formula, and when I say great, I mean super confusing because we don't have divide, we don't have calculate, we don't have distinct count in Excel. There's a lot of stuff happening here in order to make this work. Hey, through the magic of video editing, I'm jumping in from tomorrow The video was done and I was watching it again, and I realized at this point, the numerator here is coming from the pivot table, but the denominator is going back to the original data. And so you could have a weird situation where they originally billed for a service and then decided not to use it and they credited that service. And because this is looking for items that are not zero, it's going to include launch one in the denominator for item A, right? So we're dividing by one too many. If that is potentially an issue for you, switch to the end of the video where I'll show an alternate formula from Mark Proctor. And in defense of Mark, he also said, stop using implicit measures in your DAX formulas, which adds him to the long list of my friends, Rob Colley and Wynn Hopkins, who told me never to do this. I do it because to me, it's showing that this number is coming from the pivot table. Back to the video. All right, so I'm going to click OK. You should always check DAX formula to make sure you didn't screw something up, and I checked that before I turn the video recorder back on. All right, so we get our new field, average non-zero. Now, the ugly thing here, I hate this, it's going to go to the wrong place. So we have sum of amount, average non-zero, and right there, that's the number that I care about. But that's not where I want it. I want it to be down below. So I take the values and I move them to the rows area, and now I'm getting amount, average non-zero, not what I want, I don't think at all. So I take values and move it above project. Okay, now we're starting to get close to what I want. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. Right click, number format. I want it in currency, 0 decimal places, but I actually want it in thousands. So I click on custom, type comma K at the end. And then down here, right click, number format, go to custom, scroll down to the bottom. It now remembers that format. So we're good to go. I'm just going to go back and check the original AverageIF 5923, 5923. Over here, 5995, 5995. That's the answer that we're looking for. Thanks to this DAX formula, and we only unlocked DAX because we made this into a table and created the pivot table saying add this data to the data model. All right, now my problem is I don't want these items there. These rows I want to hide. And one very easy way to do that is just to come here and say home, format, hide and unhide, hide the rows, and be done with it. But there's a different way, right? And this way is only unlocked when it is a pivot table based on the data model. It's here on pivot table analyze, something called fields, items, and sets, and create a set based on row items. Now, this is going to come back to bite me twice, right? And it might bite me hard enough that I just won't do this anymore and I'll use the AverageIF. But we're this far in, let's keep going. Or we're this far in, let's stop here and just hide the rows, right? But let's see what happens when we create the set based on row items. So here's all the items in the pivot table. We want to go down to the first one that is launch one, average non-zero, and I'm going to delete that row. It doesn't give you any kind of a warm fuzzy that it worked, but see, it's gone. Now we're on launch two. I'll delete that one, 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 and that one, and click OK. And lo and behold, okay, because I created a set, they wiped out all of the number formats. Thank you, Microsoft. Wish I knew why that happened. Come back in here to custom and back down to my item. Click OK. All right. I'm actually feeling really, really good about this pivot table right now. And thanks to Mark Proctor from Excel Off the Grid for knowing the DAX on how to do this. Mark runs this awesome website called Excel Off the Grid. He has this Excel Academy, which is training covering end-to-end processes for reporting and analytics in Excel, including tables, Power Query, Power Pivot. That's the course you need to learn this DAX, and automating PowerPoint and Outlook from Excel. He has regular live masterclasses and Q&A sessions, and he even has a bunch of books that I've published available in an ebook library, right? So check out Excel Off the Grid and the Excel Academy. All right, so here we are. But now the big thing that we have to do is what happens when we add a new launch. There's launches happening all the time here on the Space Coast. I think they're targeting 73 launches this year, so this data is going to change a lot. Let's just take a look here at item C. Currently it's 3,545,000. I'm going to come down to the bottom of this data. I'm going to create a new launch called Launch A. Item C, and we'll just put a big number there, like 50 million, which clearly should change the number in the pivot table. First thing you'll see, let's do analyze, refresh. Okay, the first thing you'll see is that Launch A does not appear. Why does Launch A not appear? Oh, shoot, because we have defined a set of rows to appear. So we have to come back to fields, items, and sets and manage sets. Edit this set, and I need to add a row at the right spot. See, and this is the part where I wish I would have just hidden the row, right? So that new row is sum of amount for Launch A, right here. Like that, this turns me off so much. I'm just never going to do it, right? And our number that had been 3 million is now, because of that 50 million, an average of 9 million. So the calculation is right. The big problem is just getting those rows hidden and then adding the rows back in as we get to new launches. If this was me, I'd go back to the average non-zero method here. Although, I mean, that has problems as well because you're going to have to edit that formula. So, I don't know. I guess I could go either way. The big question, for those of you who watched this far, do you have a different way that you would solve this rather than what we have here? Let me know down in the YouTube comments below. All right, well, hey, I want to thank you for stopping by. We'll see you next time for another netcast from Mr. Excel. Hey, here's the outtake I promised you. A new formula from Mark that's going to handle this very specific situation where we build the customer and then credit the customer, so that shouldn't count as this launch using service A. In the video, that number would have been wrong, but now the number's right. This is pretty wild. First off, Mark insisted that I don't use an implicit measure inside the formula, so this sum of L cost amount is not reusing the implicit measure. But then for the denominator of the divide, he's going to count rows, right? And what's he going to count the rows up? He's creating a table on the fly here using the summarize function to sum total costs for each project. And then he's filtering that to get the ones that are zero out and then counting the rows, which in this case will cause the denominator to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instead of 8. That is a great formula. DAX has come a long way, and it makes me realize that I need to take Mark's Excel Academy. Thanks to Mark for helping out. Thanks to the folks in my class on Wednesday for inviting me down and giving me this awesome problem. The person who asked the question was a PivotTable pro. He knew everything about regular pivot tables, but has never clicked the box for add this data to the data model. For anyone who's in that category, opening up this DAX formula language, which allows you to grab numbers out of the pivot table and to do crazy, amazing things like this to solve a problem, will just open up the pivot table world to a whole new bunch of solutions.